You know, I remember reading in Matthew that after Jesus died, everybody got up out of their graves and started walking around Jerusalem, and nobody noticed except the author of Matthew. Do you believe that really happened? See, I just asked a little challenging question to their belief structure. That's when you will see the next level, and I call this religious defensiveness. You will see the exorcist, the demon, if you will, come out in this exorcist test. Now the next problem you've got is how do you get out of this discussion? Because you've got yourself into it. Here's the way. That's why it's best to do it on an airplane, because they got these people going up and down with drinks, you know. So you turn around and say, wait a minute, I want to get a drink. And you holler at the stewards going up and down and say, could I get a rum and coke from you? And one for my buddy here too, whatever. You want to break it. You want to break the conversation. And so now if you can't get a drink, do something else to break the conversation. Because now you're going to go back to condition A. Condition A now is, you know, I'm thinking about going to Hawaii myself. I want to know, my daughter went to Hawaii, and here's what she said. What do you think? And I'm going to then back into remembering his vacation to Hawaii. Again, I'm going to watch the facial gestures, the eye contact, breathing rate, tension in the neck, any indicators of what's going on inside. You will see a decided change back to condition A. So you'll see the exorcist test right before your very eyes. I will suggest this will work about 2/3 of the time. You've got to pick people who are truly religiously infected. Because if they're not, it doesn't work that well. But if you can establish how infected they are, then this will probably work. So that's the exorcist test. I want you to go out and give it a shot once or twice and see what you come up with. I think you'll be able to see how the personality is taken over by the God virus that we're going to learn about here today. So in order to understand this, we have to go back to biology and know a little bit about, in this case, a parasite. How many read Daniel Dennett's Breaking the Spell? Okay, or Richard Dawkins' God Delusion? Okay, well. So if you read those books, you've read a little bit about this little parasite. The Toxoplasma gondii is a little parasite that infects the brain of a rat. And it does just one tiny little thing. It turns the rat's fear of cats off. It does not turn the rat's fear of owls off, or raccoons, or any other predator that might eat that rat or that mouse. It simply turns off the rat's fear of cats. In this case, cat pheromones, probably. So here's this rat running around unafraid of cats. It's going to hide for cover if it sees an owl or if it smells a raccoon. But when it detects a cat, it's going to go out and say, I'm going to find a cat to kiss. Right? Why would a parasite kill its host? What is the purpose of that? Well, we see in nature lots and lots of parasitic organisms. Viruses, funguses, parasites, bacteria, that take over control of their host and literally get that host eaten so that the parasite can move on. The Toxoplasma gondii can only survive in the gut of a cat. It cannot survive in the gut of an owl. What happens? The cat eats the rat, it gets digested, comes out, another rat comes by, steps in the feces, licks it off, and the process starts all over again. There are many funguses, viruses, I said earlier, parasites that do this in nature. In fact, how many of you have heard pregnant women should stay away from cat feces? Okay, a lot of you have heard that. That's because of this little parasite, Toxoplasma gondii. Humans can get infected with this. And it appears our own brains can be taken over to some degree. There is good evidence over the last 5 years that people who are infected with Toxoplasma gondii are more neurotic than people who are not infected. Now, there's lots of ways to become neurotic. Don't get me wrong. You don't have to have a bug in your brain. But, excuse me. But that's one way to become more neurotic. In fact, there's an article written in Scientific American about 3 years ago called Bugs in the Brain by Robert Sapolsky. It's a great article. If you get a hold of it, read it. It talks about these very kinds of parasites that take over the neurological functioning of the host. Now, how many of you have been taken over by another organism? Okay, a couple people, 3 or 4 people, have been taken over by another organism. Right. Well, I'm going to suggest everyone in this room has at one time in your life, and probably within the last year, been taken over by another organism. I'm guaranteeing it just about. How many of you have had a cold in the last year? All right. If you've had any kind of cold, virus, flu, all of those organisms take over and they do one thing. They make you sneeze, which is a nerve, isn't it? It's irritating the nerves, intentionally making your sneeze reflex go off. Now, why does a cold want to make you sneeze? So it gets in your nose. Sneeze on you, or you sneeze on me. You were taken over by another organism. We think we're immune. We have this fantasy that we're immune to control by outside forces. And it is just a fantasy, because there's lots of things that take over human beings. There's lots of things that take over other animals. And we're animals just like all the rest of the creatures on this earth. So, Toxoplasma gondii reorganizes the brain of the rat, so the rat is not afraid of the cat anymore. Religion reorganizes the human brain, so that people do some pretty crazy and strange things. So my thesis is that religion is an infection of the mind. It has consequences for cognitive and, functioning and perception, including intelligence and personality. Now this is the kicker. There's been 60+ studies done in the last 80 years on intelligence. I won't go into a lot of detail. Not one of them has shown a positive relationship between religiosity and intelligence. Most of them show a negative relationship. The more religious you are, the less intelligent. Clearly, big, long-term results. Now, that's not to say we don't see intelligent people in church. We do see lots of intelligent people in church. But if you took the bell curves and overlaid those two, you're going to see a difference between the two groups. So just science, psychological research going back decades. Those infected with religion tend to avoid or deny scientific or rational explanations for their behavior in favor of the supernatural. You ever notice that? People are always explaining perfectly natural things that happen to everybody. God saved me. Or God did that to you because He didn't like you, but He does like me. I got in a car wreck, 3 people get killed, and I'm saved. Well, obviously God liked me better than those other 3. That's kind of the way it looks to me anyway. So today what I want you to do, as I'm talking, I don't want you to focus on the virus part. I want you to focus on the strategy part. As we've already seen, there's other organisms that can take over your brain. The Toxoplasma gondii has a strategy for infecting you. Cold viruses have a strategy for infecting you. Religions have strategies for infecting you. So don't get hung up on the virus idea. It's just a metaphor to help us understand what's going on when religions get in our brain. I could have called it the god fungus, could have called it god parasite, or the god bacteria. Those just didn't seem to get the editor's attention. So she decided on the god virus. When do you get religion? You get religion when your rational immune system is immature. In other words, 5 to 7 years old. That's when most people get religion, is when they're 5 to 7 years old. They don't get religion when they're older, except when their rational immune system is under stress. You notice? Have you ever known anybody that got religion when they were 35? They got Jesus? Yeah, all right. They got Jesus when they were 35 or 40 or even older. Go back and look at their history. Most people who wake up one morning and say, Jesus is the answer. They didn't wake up and say, Allah is the answer. They woke up and said, Jesus is the answer because that's who they were exposed to. That was the God virus they were exposed to at the age of 5 to 7 years old. Now, give or take a few years here, but that's the critical stage. That's why the Jesuits say, give me a child till they're 7 and I'll have them the rest of their life. 7 years old, 5 to 7 is such an incredibly important time period. But your rational immune system is underdeveloped. You are not capable of critiquing the crazy ideas that are being put in your head at that time in your life. Now later, you're perfectly capable of critiquing everybody else's crazy ideas, The Catholics can critique the Mormons' crazy ideas, but the Mormons can't critique their own crazy ideas if they were infected at that time period. It's like the Toxoplasma gondii got into the rat brain. Do you think the rat knows he's infected? No. Do you think the Catholic knows they're infected? Probably not. That's the power of this. It literally blinds people to the inconsistencies of their religion, but they can see everyone else's. So, rational immune system. We know we all have a biological immune system, but we also have a rational immune system that teaches us, if you go to college, if you go to classes on logic, if you go to take science classes, you learn how to critique your world, how to study your world, and to take your own self out of it where possible and analyze it in a reality-based focus. Religionists have a hard time doing that, especially with their own religion. So we're going to learn about infection channels, and here's some of the major channels we'll talk about today. Hypnosis, stress, I've mentioned that a little bit, guilt. I'll come back and talk a bit about guilt. Social needs. People come to church to get their social needs met. The problem is they have to get infected with the God virus in order to stay very healthy. If you're an atheist and you go to a Baptist church Sunday school class and you ask all your stupid questions about people raising from the dead, you think people get cured just by putting a blessing over or something? After about 4 weeks, you'll find there's not enough chairs in the Sunday school class when you walk in. You'll see that the church social you didn't get invited to. They've got subtle ways of making sure you know you're not invited, because you're really not welcome. If you don't agree with our particular God virus, you're not welcome. And it's not just an atheist. If you're a Mormon, go to a Baptist church and talk about your Mormonism. You will not be welcome after 3 or 4 weeks, or any other contrary religion. Sex I will come back and talk about quite a bit here in a little bit. And music.